Welcome to Monday with Joe Moorhead, and actually with us, Steve and David, from the Genes Page 24/7 staff. All right, Steve, let's just cut to the chase here after that. And I know people will be watching the video you're putting up of Coach Joe Moorhead's full press conference, but not a whole lot today was about LSU. Yes, the coach talked about them. We had a couple of questions about LSU's quarterback. Today was all about Mississippi State, about the state of the program coming off a disastrous, no other word for it, loss at Tennessee that nobody saw coming. The first 6 minutes of Joe Moorhead's press conference really kind of set us back a little bit because it was heartfelt, it was soul open, but it was also a little why now and what this.
There was a part of me, David, as he began to work through all that and talk about how humbling it has been to be in the SEC for a year and a half. I thought he was about to resign. I mean, as he began to go through that in and out, I don't expect that to happen, but the tone and timbre of things, as he began to – he really spoke personally. He mentioned his daughter and the fact that her being on the field and being emotional after the ball game. Sometimes I think we forget these coaches do have families, and when there are negative things that happen, there are other people that maybe didn't sign on for that are negatively impacted. But I was a little bit taken aback, but I didn't expect that, I guess, from Joe today. But that's what we got.
Well, in looking at it purely from a former PR guy standpoint like myself, as a fan like myself, and as a writer like myself, and you fall in the same categories, most of that, we like for coaches to acknowledge that they hear what the world is saying. But professionally, we worry about coaches who listen to what the world is saying. What kind of balance do you think he struck in that?
I don't know if there was any balance, David. I mean, that's the thing that I think was kind of disarming about it, is the fact that he didn't offer a lot of coach speak about any of that. I thought he really spoke from the heart, and maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe that's the turning point, for Joe. But I think it's one of those things where I think Joe at sometimes, and I'm be careful how I say this because words fail sometimes, but I think he struggles sometimes to kind of shut the noise out. I think he is aware of what's said, and I think it's because it matters to him. I think it's important to him that he has a good relationship with the Mississippi State fan base, and nothing hurts a relationship worse from a coaching standpoint than losing football games, especially to teams like Tennessee.
Now, it's good to see that he still has a sense of humor, as your ending question about Bob from Bogachita pointed out there. And by the way, I'll be very disappointed if Saturday there's not a TV shot of somebody, one of you out in the stand saying, "Hi, I'm Bob," out there. So maybe we get Antonio Hargrove back somehow to do something like this. So, yes, we talk about it. We like for the coach.
David, can I say this? If we get Antonio Hargrove to do this, it might be his greatest contribution to Mississippi State athletics.
Well, other than the few interviews we did when he was a youngster at State, he was hilarious. Okay, some of you have no clue what we're talking about or who we're talking about, so just ride with it. But what I'm saying is, yes, fans want to know the coach hears what he's saying, but they also worry about when the coach listens too much. But again, it was him being totally honest, and he made the comment that said he is a people pleaser. And the main way he wants to please fans is by winning football games, which is his goal. How does he start turning things around after a really, really, really bad loss at Tennessee? And we don't expect State to win this weekend. Let's be upfront about that. But fans want to see a program that knows what it's doing and has a focus, has a plan, and is sticking to it and making it happen. You could tell from what he said about going over things, he's changed how they reviewed games. In fact, he talked about the running game in particular, that instead of pointing out some good plays and bad plays, they just went right through the whole thing and showed where it all broke down. So he's kind of taking a harder tone, it seems, in a post-game breakdown and in game week preparation.
Yeah, he said that ideally they take 5 good plays and 5 bad plays. They went through, I think, 35 negative plays. That's good to hear, because I think you don't want to shelter the players from any of their failures. That's the only way they're going to get better. But, Dave, the bottom line is this team, warts and all, this team should be 5-1. This team is 2 plays away from being top 15, and we still wouldn't be a great football team, but we would still have a better record and probably shaping up for some difficult losses. But the reality of that is this team should be in much better standing because they lost 2 games that are still inexcusable to 2 teams that they were inferior to them. And all due respect to Kansas State and Tennessee and anybody like that, but this is a team at Mississippi State that simply has more talent. They didn't play like it. And what happens sometimes, David, is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You get that here we go again type mentality, and that's kind of how it felt when we faced some adversity early in that ball game against Tennessee. And then thankfully, Joe made the call to Garrett Schrader in the second half and then announces today. And I think that's the first time since week 2 that he has been so forthright rather than waiting to make it a game-time announcement that Garrett Schrader is the starting quarterback at Mississippi State.
Now, to be fair, we did ask him in the postgame Saturday. He said, did Garrett Schrader do enough? And he said he did, and he is, but that was not the same as today saying, yes, he'll be number one. Now, he did say he expects Tommy Stevens to have a role the rest of the season. I would be very surprised if he didn't. And he also brought a little clarity to the Keaton Thompson situation as well. But we'll get to the quarterback again in just a moment. You talked about starting games badly. He mentioned that there's a plan when the kickoff is between the 5 and the 1, you're supposed to call fair catch. And State did not do that. Brian Cole fumbled the ball. You start in a hole. You pointed out the missed field goal. The punting really broke down after several really good games. But he went to lengths to defend how the special teams are playing, and that kind of struck a very curious chord.
It did, David, because the one consistency with Mississippi State football this year has been the inconsistency of special teams, and that's just us calling it as it is. Each week you almost have to kind of prepare for a certain failure. In that respect, I thought Tucker Day had one really big punt, a 56-yarder that was huge, outkicked the coverage a little bit, but that's not his job. He's just supposed to hit the ball, hit a great punt, 56 yards outside the numbers. We didn't cover it exceptionally well. But there were a couple other 37-yarders when State really had a chance to flip the field there. And so it's just been one of those things that has been a consistent burr in the Bulldog saddle. It's just that you can expect to have some special teams failure week after week.
Of course, you mentioned that he did declare that Schrader will start the game and talk of the quarterback situation there. He also pointed out there were some plays that were there in the passing game to be made. And, yes, Schrader's still a raw, much in progress. Tommy Stevens, we know, is the better passer, but he's just not healthy enough right now, and that's not his problem. It's just it was happening. So he mentioned that. So it shows that their plays are there to be made. So the focus becomes, how do you make those plays? Now, maybe you don't make them this weekend, but certainly there are some defenses coming up that State ought to be able to score on. But, of course, that was the case this past weekend. So I read that as the coach telling the team, here's what you ought to be doing, and here's how we're going to make that happen.
Yeah, David, you mentioned a couple plays being, the third Isaiah Zuber on the 3rd and 12 play. You hit him in stride, he might even score. He's wide open there. The pass to Stephen Guidry that was initially ruled down on the ground and upheld on review, you hit him in stride there, he might score. And sometimes that's the margin between winning and losing. So schematically, Joe has taken, the brunt of things sometimes, but there are plays there to be made. I think this quarterback changed the step in the right direction. I think Mississippi State fans are probably relieved a little bit today to feel like, okay, Garrett gives us the best chance to win. And you heard the head ball coach say as much today, that Schrader is doing what's best for Mississippi State football today. And I think not just for this season, but for the future. Tommy Stevens is brought in here to kind of be a stopgap guy while Garrett Schrader developed and learn the nuances of this offense. But the future is now, David, and I think Garrett gives State the best chance to win 3 more ball games and achieve bowl eligibility. I don't know that you could say that with some other quarterbacks on this roster.
I tend to agree, and simply because Moorhead used the phrase improvise in reference to Schrader in the games after the game Saturday, and improvisation is what this offense needs right now. If we're really concerned about the offensive line play at Tennessee, because they're better than that. Colin Hill never broke a tackle because he was getting gang tackled when he got to the line of scrimmage. That obviously, and Moorhead's made clear that as much as you want to upgrade the passing game, the run game is the key to this offense. Now you're facing an LSU team that's not great defensively, but certainly can make plays. A lot of great talent on that side. And plus they know they only have to make a few stops with the fabulous offense they have leading the NCAA in scoring. But more the key, I think, Steve, is not about this week. It's about getting some confidence back in the offense. And let's face it, have you been surprised there have been so few questions raised about the defensive side of the ball, even during the course of the last month, to the head coach?
Yeah, in some respects. And we mentioned Colin Hill. Colin Hill is one of the most explosive offensive players in this league. And I think we've been a little bit derelict of duty in respect that, 13 yards on 11 carries, but not a single pass to him out of the backfield, not a single attempt to get him involved in the passing game, not a single attempt to be creative and get the ball in his hands in other ways. I think when you have a bull like Colin Hill, you want him leading the charge at every opportunity. And, if they're going to sell out to stop the run, then I'm going to do my best to match him up outside and get him out in space with the football. That's where I think there were some failures. And Joe kind of acknowledged that today, too. He said, you know what, we've got to be a little more creative with Colin. If they can do that, then I think you can win some ball games down the stretch. But this weekend is going to be a very, very difficult task. And there's a lot of Bulldog fans that are already kind of beginning to check out because they're putting their tickets up for sale and that sort of stuff. And trust me, the LSU fans will have no qualms about gobbling those up. But this season's not over, though it may feel like it in many respects. And I think this quarterback change with Garrett Schrader hopefully will spark some renewed enthusiasm in Mississippi State football.
Are you saying that Bob from Bogalusa will probably be in the crowd this weekend?
Well, I think it's
Leonard from Laplace.
It's Bo, B-A-U-X, Bo from Bogalusa, and Boudreaux and Thibodeau from Lafitte and Pierpont and places like that, and parts unknown. The Acadian people will turn out in great number, and they're all welcome here. And they'll probably feed many of us. David and I will probably partake in some of the Cajun cuisine that is provided. But, I expect a huge LSU. There always is. There always is a huge LSU following. But their fan base right now feels they have a legitimate chance to take down Alabama this year. They have a legitimate chance to have a potential Heisman finalist in Joe Burrow. So we're going to see a lot of purple and gold on Saturday. I hope we see a fair share of maroon and white as well.
A few details on the Bulldogs, of course. The injury situation, nobody came out of the game really banged up. Garrett Schrader still has I believe his left ankle is something of an issue, but it got better towards the end of the week, and he was okay coming off in the walking boot. Tommy Stevens looked all right on the right ankle. That's been one of his problems. No other injuries that we noticed. Also, State found out that next week's game at Texas A&M will be an 11 o'clock a.m. kickoff from College Station for the SEC Network, and any other notes that caught your eye today, or was everything just so overshadowed by the first 6 minutes of today's presser?
Yeah, I mean, today was really more about Mississippi State. There really wasn't a lot of talk about LSU or what they do offensively or defensively. And, outside of his opening statement, then he breaks into a little bit of breaking down about LSU. But, I think at this point, many of the questions that the media as well as the fan base has is just what's the direction of this program? Not so much this week or this opponent, but what's next for Mississippi State? And I think that was a lot of what Joe wanted to address today is just here is where we are, here is what we're dealing with, and here's what we plan to do. And there are a lot of Bulldog fans right there, frankly, that really aren't interested in hearing any of that. They don't care about the birthing pains. They just want to see the baby.
So we'll find out what happens with the birthing process this weekend here at Scott Field at Davis Wade Stadium, Mississippi State, 2:39 kickoff for CBS's viewing pleasure and presentation as the number 2 Tigers come to town. We'll be shooting our usual video on Friday to prepare for the game, and we'll have a lot of things taking place this weekend. So follow all our coverage this week on GPTV 24/7 as our crew takes care of business here. For our cameraman, Mike Nemeth, and for Steve Robertson here at the Seal Center, this is David Murray.